Hi, Payton. Thanks for joining us. As you all know, I'm Dave Belsky, the CEO and founder of FlowerHire. We have a phenomenal sunset session today. Payton Shubrick, the CEO and founder of Six Bricks in Massachusetts. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, excited to be here. We got some great ground to cover today. But I guess first question for people that may not be familiar, can you share what is Six Bricks?
Absolutely. So Six Bricks is an adult use retailer in my hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts.
Excellent. So you're taking a step back here, a former collegiate athlete yourself, once an athlete, always an athlete. After
Certainly.
college, right? Same. After college, went the corporate route, but started getting involved with local city government right about the time that the city of Springfield was thinking about opting into the adult use program and starting their dispensary application process. And you were witnessing this firsthand. What did you see where you're like, I need to go after getting one of these stores? What was that realization like for you?
Yeah, it was a combination of different things. To start, I grew up in a dry household, so it wasn't as though I was around cannabis or alcohol and therefore was inspired based on what I was seeing at home, but more so acknowledging that while interning with the Springfield City Council, I was meeting folks that were showing up representing their different multi-state operators, and we're talking about Springfield more as a profit center and less as a community, as they acknowledge that there was quite a bit of money to be made, but they also weren't talking about how they were going to focus on driving economic development in the city of Springfield. And so I saw this emerging industry as an opportunity for me to stay closer to home, which is what I wanted to do, while also being a part of an industry that was just getting its start. And I mean, how often are you a part of the formation of a brand new industry, right? I miss big tobacco. I missed alcohol and many other things. And so it was acknowledging there was an opportunity, and I could also do a lot of good in my community because there was an authenticity. So our tagline is people, plant, and purpose. And that means something to those who shop with us because we're putting people back at the start of their cannabis experience.
And I think if you look at Massachusetts as a state, specifically, the cannabis industry there's been, waves of growth and consolidation and multi-state operators buying into the state and then leaving the state. But, something is resonating around the work that you're doing around Six Bricks and the retail experience there, because, obviously you just won, I believe it was the NECANN award for the best dispensary in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And the dispensary itself in Springfield has been open for 13, 14 months?
Yeah, so 13 months. And we also picked up Reader Raves, which is produced by Mass Live, as best dispensary as well. So we're officially a 2-time award-winning dispensary within our first year. And that just speaks to the power of community, because we have folks who are showing up willing to vote for us, support us, and shop with us. And that means a lot.
Well, I definitely want to talk further about community, but because again, you have the industry, the cannabis industry recognized Six Bricks, and then the consumer, the shopper, both recognized Six Bricks, 2 different awards, both equally impressive and important. And it's the consumer one that I think speaks volumes to what you've built there so far. But you had mentioned, growing up in a dry household, and you saw what was happening at the Springfield City Council and all these folks coming in that didn't really care about Springfield or know. I just knew there was the 3rd biggest city in Massachusetts. How did that conversation go on the home front? Did they also appreciate the emerging industry, like getting in on the ground floor of it that you saw?
Absolutely not. My father was woefully disappointed to start, mainly because at the time I told him, as well as my mother, that I was going to law school. And so my dad went as far as to pay for my LSAT books, as well as pay for me to go take the LSAT. And I chose not to do either, and told him, instead of being the lawyer you thought I would become, I'm going to be a legal drug dealer and own a dispensary. Will you join me? And so it was a very interesting conversation of understanding. First, he assumed I was smoking weed, which was a very interesting conversation we both had to walk through, but then understood what I was getting at, which is I had this entrepreneurial spirit that I simply couldn't ignore. And I wanted the ability to be successful in my hometown. I mean, growing up, I oftentimes heard, hey, you can be successful, but you need to go to Boston or you need to go to New York. I mean, there's just not many options here for you in Springfield. So the idea there was this emerging industry coming to my hometown that was going to buy me some time to really impact my community for the better and drive economic development, I couldn't pass up. But it took my dad a few days to kind of reconcile with the reality that, I mean, he had positioned me as the family lawyer for quite some time. He had put some money into it, not only with the LSAT books and course, but also with my undergrad degree. And now I'm willfully telling him I want to be a legal drug dealer. The legal part was really important in all the conversations, though, just so I was clearly
For the record.
Yes, very,
Yes.
very important for the record.
Yeah.
So it took a little time, but he definitely bought in. And Six Bricks is a play on the last name Shubrick, which we all hold. So the idea that we could position ourselves as a family-owned entity in the community, ushering in this industry over time, definitely won him over. But it took some time. My siblings less concerned; they thought it was the coolest thing since sliced bread. But dad and mom, not so much.
Yeah, but obviously they once they came around to it and they saw and they knew you and knew how driven you were once you had a purpose, they've been supportive and obviously the name Six Bricks is six family members, the last name Shubrick, and that's where that store came about. So this is a family owned business and a family that is from Springfield, from I'm guessing your parents' generation down to your generation, and that's I love the play on words. But do you guys like is there a current role for each family member in operating the business?
Yes, but not all. So to clarify, I'm the oldest of four. My younger brother's 14. He has no role in the business. I have to say that publicly. His role is high school right now, and we can appreciate that.
Yep.
However, yes, my parents are both involved. My mom's our executive secretary. My father manages all of our facilities, both internal and external. So yes, snow, sleet, rain, he's making sure people can safely enter the facility, which I can appreciate. And then my two sisters, there's both Taylor, who's managing all of our marketing and community responsibility, and Jordan, who is interning with us right now, helping to support our security functions as she finishes her dissertation with Duke. And she'll graduate in December, and we're really proud of her for that. So it's nice to see us all come together to have a family-owned business while also staying true to what interests us.
And the family owned business part, I mean, obviously everyone of age that's part of it and has a role that they play, it's no picnic. Like it's real work, right? I mean, this is, yes, it's a startup, but it's a small business owner, and I'm sure even getting to the point of being able to get the store to actually open 13 months ago was a lot of effort and blood, sweat, and tears. But once you open, yeah, you start making money in theory, you have customers, but that's a real challenge day to day. Like, how do you deal as a CEO of a small business? One is, with as many moving parts as cannabis retail, not only from a customer service and success standpoint, but also from an execution standpoint. How do you deal with that?
Great question. I mean, I think there's a number of things that factor into it. One, I'm lucky. I have a really committed team, and yes, they're family, but also at the same time, there's clarity around roles. So it's never a questioning of my authority as CEO, but more so an understanding that I'm making the decision that I feel is best in order to progress us forward. But it's also being realistic in terms of expectations. I think that many folks saw the cannabis industry and had this mindset of build it and they will come. And they forgot the nuances of that this is a retail establishment that needs great customer service, that needs to have a strategy as it relates to recruiting talent for those that are going to work for you, but also a strategy around how are you going to keep customers interested and make sure that you're providing them the best products at the best prices. And so it's managing all the different components, but it starts with a strong foundation. And I was fortunate to have a family that was willing to roll up their sleeves and get involved, and then expand that into the team that we eventually hired here at Six Bricks that really set us up for a long-term success. But I will say clarity of role is definitely an important piece, because it's easy to have that scope creep of, well, I'll just say it this way because she's my sister and see if I can get my way. It's like, no, the marketing budget's 10 grand. That's all you got. Work with it. And so I can appreciate that.
Well, the family business part, there's its own set of challenges. It seems like you've worked through that, but it required clear delineation of authority, and in some capacity your parents are reporting to you as it relates to this store. Everyone's comfortable with their roles, and you don't have everything by committee all the time, because that type of analysis paralysis is super detrimental to a lot of small business trying to get off the ground, because there's so many different things to tackle.
Oh, most certainly. And I'd say the other piece is being clear on what the priorities are. Once everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so it's being clear that, yes, that's a nice to have, but if it's not core to what we need to do as a business, then it gets put on the back burner. And sometimes it's on no burner, and there has to be comfort in that. And so acknowledging the working dynamics that become important, and me being CEO and being clear about what I expect and how I'm directing the company, and getting everybody on board to follow that. It's not easy, but again, having a foundation of folks who fundamentally want to see you succeed hits different, because it goes further than just the transaction of employee-employer.
I have nothing but the most respect for the cannabis CEO. I've gotten to know quite a few of them. It's not an easy job. It's not a bunch of Lindsay Lohan parties on a yacht in the Mediterranean. It's real work that never stops, and you don't know what every day is going to bring, right? And you seem to be incredibly well cut out for being an entrepreneur, for being a CEO.
Thank you.
Family obviously is everything, and belief in the work that you're doing and its impact on the community, which we're going to touch on more. I'm curious, in your background, like, what prepared you think? What tools did you have that maybe you didn't even realize you had when you started this, that have put you in a position to not only get the business off the ground, but also run it successfully in its first year to a point of where you're being recognized by your customers in the industry itself?
Yeah, most certainly. I'd say some of it dates back to my childhood. I mean, my father was very much a man who was clear that in order to be successful, you had to be willing to work twice as hard. And that meant even on your birthday, you're getting the job done. And so when I remember being younger and going to New York City and spending time with family members, and I had an aunt who owned a series of Allstate insurance agencies when they were in their heyday. And I spent my summers going to work with her Monday through Friday and answering phones and understanding that, I mean, yes, you had a lunch break, but you were eating lunch at your desk because you were powering through, because clients needed to be serviced. And if they had a bad day, you failed them in some capacity because you were supposed to make it a better one. So there was a lot of lessons learned within my childhood. I mean, I'm 12 years old answering some of these phone calls like, hi, thank you for calling Allstate. My name is Payton. How can I help you today? And then typing in some of the issues. Good. Yeah, I mean, I still got it ingrained in me. And so that upbringing in terms of understanding a work ethic and being gentle pressure relentlessly applied, because there's nothing worse than being well-intentioned and engaging with a customer, but turning them off because your approach is super aggressive. That really laid a foundation. And then I was able to expand upon that within my undergrad degree at Holy Cross in terms of really understanding who I wanted to be in the world and what that would look like in terms of Jesuit values and being a man or woman with and for others. And so there was a combination of different things that really set me up for success in terms of being what I'd consider an empathetic entrepreneur, in terms of I'm looking to solve problems in terms of my business model, but also acknowledging that your business has to be profitable in order to solve any problems. And so that delicate balance is a combination of multiple years. But it definitely started with my childhood, because that's probably where I first got the entrepreneurial bug.
Well, I love that you talked about just strong values in terms of it's evident how you treat people, and conversations we've had about what's really important to you as an employer, especially for your team members. And ultimately, cannabis is an opportunity, if you do it right, to really build the right culture for the workplace in 2023, right? And it involves, not all about pay. Pay is obviously very important, but it's really
Yeah.
about making sure that, there's a culture that, takes care of their people. And there's an opportunity because there's an alignment often around excitement around being part of this and working in an industry that has a value set they can get behind, right? But I'm sure that is translated actually really well for you. I'd love to talk about your community further. So every interview that I've seen that you've been in, it's very clear. You have a lot of pride for Springfield, Massachusetts, right? And talk to me about the Springfield community and what you saw as the importance of cannabis as a job creator, based on what that community maybe needed. I mean, you said yourself, your parents had told you you're probably gonna have to move to New York or Boston, after college, right? Talk to me about the community of Springfield.
Yeah, most certainly. So I think many folks in cannabis, or I shouldn't say many, I think that overall, as the cannabis industry has rolled out, there has been a large part of it that has ignored or silenced the checkered history of cannabis. So growing up in the city of Springfield, I remember seeing a kid drop a dime bag and being grabbed up by a school administrator in the hallway. And that altered the trajectory of their life in comparison to mine, because they went to in-house suspension. It perhaps became a slippery slope for them. And then the future opportunities for them were limited based on the fact that now they're being labeled the drug dealer and they're selling weed and all of these different components. And so for me, community meant acknowledging the checkered history of cannabis, which is to say, on the same blocks we now see dispensaries, there was once a kid with a backpack that had dime bags in it. And if we as cannabis companies can't acknowledge that and respect it in some way, shape, or form, then we aren't doing our job as legal cannabis businesses, because we should be engaging with those communities versus ignoring them or providing donations to law enforcement that are going to further reprimand and push them to the outskirts versus engaging them. I mean, let's think about it on its surface. If someone went to jail for a cannabis related crime, they probably know a thing or two about cannabis. So why are we ostracizing them versus pulling them in? And I think the success that I've had here at Six Bricks is, prior to community outreach meetings or going through the formal licensure process, I went to neighborhood councils and I said, tell me what you're concerned about as it relates to having a dispensary in your community. And that set me up for success, because you had people who were able to share their experiences. If I had cannabis back in the day, Peyton, I'd be arrested, I might be beaten, my life wouldn't look the way it did now. So I'm struggling to rectify with the reality that now it looks like an Apple store and we have people coming into our community and buying it, and yet nobody from our community is being employed by it. Right. And so understanding the concerns of the community and being intentional in how we address that by hiring folks from the community, and not always making it a situation where they have to come to us, but us going to them, going to the neighborhood council meetings, hosting job fairs in the community, and being seen as a neighborhood partner as opposed to just a brick and mortar establishment that popped up overnight. That was truly the game changer. But I think more folks need to acknowledge that there's many things you can't change about yourself. The two most top of mind for me are where you're born and who you're born to. And so I can't change my family. I can't change where I'm from. So why not embrace those two? And in doing so, Six Bricks has been able to not only be creative, but now be successful in this industry. So it's a lot of things to be excited about.
Well, I think you got something a lot correct for sure. The idea of having people working in your store that are from the community, that are born and raised there, that have families there, there's something to that. I mean, cannabis, is a very, personal experience for everybody that seeks it out. And even though you're a recreational cannabis shop, I'm sure a good portion of the people that come in there are looking at it for some form of wellness or medicine, right? And so like understanding and having that backstory and that trust with people in the community to come in and really get educated on this plant, this product from people that like they went to school with their parents, 20 years ago and things like that. I'm sure those stories happen all the time, but I think a lot of, we'll call it the more of the corporate cannabis, get the importance of that in the retail experience wrong, right? And the importance of like really understanding and representing the community, having the right people there. So because I think a lot of times shoppers, especially outside of like an urban center or like a border store that's next to another state, like you're talking about people that are going to probably view cannabis in some form of like they're going to have a certain amount of money they can spend, they're going to budget it out, it's going to be something consistently they're going to choose to be part of, and it's a rewarding feeling, I think, for a consumer if they go into a place where it does feel a sense of family and familiarity, and they understand the roots and the legacy, and that they're supporting a hardworking local small business. I mean, that's something that's really hard to replicate unless you set it up exactly like that. And it's no wonder that not only the industry acknowledges the uniqueness of what you've done, but also your customers. So again, congrats to all of that, because it's a big deal. It's super impressive. I think as it relates to even the relationship you seem to have with like the local city. I mean, that really sticks out when you have like the city gets invited to celebrate this business, which they had to rubber stamp and took forever to do so, but they're appreciative of you following through on I'm guessing what you said you were going to do the whole time, which was hire from the community, have it be a family run business, not sell out, and have it be a place that is run really well, that strengthens the community instead of adding more harm to it.
Oh, most certainly. I think many of our elected officials can appreciate that I followed through on everything I said I was going to do and continue to be creative and innovative about the ways in which I stay in the community. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is not something where you set it and forget it. It's constantly thinking through how to be creative and innovative to get new customers to explore your store who perhaps are shopping with more corporate cannabis companies, while also at the same time thinking about how you drive economic development. So for example, this Saturday, we'll have our Haunted Bar takeover. There's a Black-owned brewery in the community. We'll be throwing our Halloween party there from 7 to 10. It's free to our customers. It's an opportunity for them to engage with some of the brands that they've learned to love and appreciate, like your Fernways and Root and Bloom and Wana and so many others. So when you think about it holistically, it's also breaking up the idea that the only time you'll see a cannabis brand is in store, but creating opportunities and more so experiences, which I think is missing right now. There's a very transactional focus around get in, get your product, maybe engage with the bud tender, but do so quickly because there's a line. Or what we're seeing more of is iPad kiosks, which are replacing that of a traditional bud tender. And I think the community has responded well because our bud tenders are well informed on terpenes and cannabinoids and the endocannabinoid system, and they'll take time to have a conversation. So for the older woman who was my teacher in 3rd grade, who has no understanding of what edibles are, but wants to try them, she feels confident in creating an experience for herself at Six Bricks that she knows can't be replicated somewhere else because there's that level of authenticity and care. So it's a few different components to what has helped us thus far, and I think will continue to carry us because community dispensaries matter. They are here, they're here to stay, and they're focused on that community. I'm not worried about licensure in another state. I'm worried about how I can better service the folks here, and elected officials see that when you keep showing up to things.
Yeah, and I love it, and I mean, you got the license, I'm sure based on that there was only a limited amount granted in the city of Springfield, you have plenty of opportunity to sell that license if you wanted to, but that's not why you want it, and that's not what you wanted to do, and you're proving everybody, who questioned it very much so wrong. Unfortunately, in the legal cannabis industry now, there's a lot of good intentions around like social equity programs and things like that, but not a lot of results yet. It's rare to find a Black family owned retail business in cannabis in the legal market that's licensed and doing well, that serves the community. How do we increase that? How do we open up more opportunity for other, similarly minded people with lots of energy and intelligence and leadership to do the same thing you're able to do? Why is it so hard and why is it so rare?
Yeah, I think there's a few different things. I think one, representation matters. So the fact that we don't see people of color, women of color, Black women more specifically in the space creates a dynamic where if it's not seen, it's understood that perhaps it's not for me. But to your question, how do we get more? Well, we really have to think about the structures and systems we have in place. The barrier to enter is extremely high and it's capitally intensive. And that automatically puts communities that are described here in Massachusetts as areas of disproportionate impact at a disadvantage. How do you know a private investor that's going to write you a check for $250,000 or $500,000 and isn't going to do so with predatory lending to quickly follow because, it's not well intentioned from the start? And so looking at the systems we have in place and fundamentally understanding, is it an equitable process? And equity meaning, does it get everyone what they need to be successful? Or have we created a standard that's not going to be achievable for certain groups of people due to systems that were in place well before you and I were born? I mean, let's not confuse it. Structural racism is still very much alive and well. There is gaps in generational wealth and so many other factors that make it very difficult. So revising the processes, policies, and structures is just the first step of many to get more people of color in the space. Because let's not confuse the reality, which is prior to legalization, there were plenty of people of color in the space who were doing well. And now we want to refer to it as the Black market, the gray market, the legacy market. But in any case, it was a market. We didn't allow those folks to participate in the legal market because if we take Massachusetts, for example, if you want to get in the medical space, you had to be vertically integrated. Well, that's tough because now I not only have to raise money for retail, but also manufacture and production and also cultivation. So
Millions
out the
and
gate,
millions of dollars.
exactly. And so at the end of the day, if money becomes the obstacle, how do we remove it? And if we're not having those conversations, then the programs we're putting in place fundamentally are never going to be successful because it never provides the real opportunity. The best example I can give, kind of like playing Monopoly without ever giving out money to start, right? And so, yeah, you can move the pieces across the board, but never really making any moves that
Well,
matter.
those rent payments are gonna make you go negative real quick, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, but I really appreciate you taking the time today to share your story and the story of Six Bricks with us. There's a lot of lessons for entrepreneurs, for retail operators in terms of what works and what to think about. And congrats for carving a unique path in cannabis. And I know you're just getting started. So
Yeah.
Payton Shubrick, Six Bricks, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.